Good evening, I'm Maciej Mikos and you're watching World News Tonight, live from Warsaw. New member states should make us stronger, not weaker. That's the main message from the European Union as it presented its annual report on enlargement. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy called for Ukraine to join the EU before 2030 as the Commission delivered a warning on corruption. We'll have more on that in just a moment, but first, let's take a look at tonight's headlines.
This is a major blow for
Belarus
Polish
holds
and
transit
local drivers.
Belarus holds transit of trucks with EU license plates after Lithuania shuts border crossings.
The number of Russians entering the country has been gradually increasing.
New bus route connects Warsaw with Kaliningrad, sparking fears over Poland's security. And the European Convention on Human Rights is 75 years old, but is it outdated? The EU wants no Trojan horse to enter the bloc, says Enlargement Commissioner Marta Kos. The European Commission is discussing the idea of a probation period for new member states. And so joining me now is our EU correspondent Angela Skujins. Good evening, Angela. So what is the European Commission afraid of?
Good evening. So the European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, she is the individual responsible for coining that term of the Trojan horse. According to her, she is concerned that EU aspirant countries, once they've joined the European Union, will backslide on democracy and will uphold values that are hostile towards the European Union, perhaps aligning themselves closer with Moscow. The subtext here, of course, is Hungary, with that country's Prime Minister Viktor Orban repeatedly torpedoing Ukraine's bid to join the European Union, as well as preventing meaningful support from the EU going to Ukraine. However, she didn't identify Hungary in this context, but that is what many journalists picked up. But this is what she had to say off the back of reporters pressing her to explain what this probationary period could look like and the value for it for EU citizens.
The main goal is that once we take somebody into the European Union, new member states, this will make us stronger, not weaker.
Right, Angela, so what exactly is the status of Ukraine as a candidate state?
Yes, so European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen wants Ukraine to join the EU by 2030. Ukraine launched its bid after Russia's full-scale invasion in 2022. The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy dialed into a summit focusing on enlargement, where he says he wants Ukraine to join well before this date. He was also pressed regarding that proposal by the European Commissioner for Enlargement, Marta Kos, regarding that probationary period for EU member states. He was firmly against the idea.
And if we speak about the EU membership, it has to be fully fledged. It seems to me that that is very important when we have at the same table equal countries in spite of their size of the territory or the population. It's important that they share similar values. In my opinion, you cannot be semi or demi-member of the EU.
In the report focusing on Ukraine's EU accession bid, it does highlight praise as well as pitfalls, particularly regarding the watering down of key anti-corruption institutions. In July, this was reversed after significant international pressure as well as domestic protests gripping that country for a series of days. But this is just one piece of Ukraine's EU accession puzzle. We know that to move forward on its bid, Ukraine needs the approval of the 27 EU member states, such as the Hungarian Prime Minister Viktor Orban. So while today focused on what is being done internally within those EU aspirant countries, we also got significant commentary on what the EU is doing to move forward with the process more broadly.
That was Angela Skujins reporting from Brussels. Thank you very much, Angela. And we're staying on the topic. The European Commission has approved the enlargement package, which assesses the progress made by EU candidate states in the past 12 months. Serbia A country rocked by anti-government protests has been urged to speed up the necessary reforms with a special focus on human rights. Paweł Trzaskowski reports from Belgrade.
The polarization of the Serbian society that has deepened over the year of student-led anti-government protests impacts the EU accession process. This is one of the main takeaways from today's enlargement package. Calls to reverse the backsliding on the freedom of expressions were also made, but despite that, the country's president Alexander Vučić seems to remain a partner for the EU when it comes to accession talks. And one of the reasons behind that might be the fact that his opposition industries does not present an openly pro-EU agenda.
I would like to see anyone supporting our protests. We have been to European institutions, students have been cycling to Strasbourg. There was a recent resolution by the European Union. We would like to see something actually being done and not just the "oh, we're deeply concerned."
Any kind of support is welcoming, and I think if you look at the European values and what's happening here, the support is expected, but I don't think it's something that we should be striving towards. You know, it's something that we should also, by what we are doing, is something that we should be supported because.
Serbia has been an EU candidate country since 2012, despite the shortcomings outlined today in the enlargement package. The recommendation for the country to open the cluster free of negotiations remains valid. From Belgrade, Serbia, for TVP World, I'm Paweł Trzaskowski.
Belarus has introduced a ban on trucks from the EU from entering the country. The new regulation, which is to stay in place until the end of 2027, led to thousands of trucks stranded at the border. Kazimierz Łysiak has this report.
Long lines on the borders with Belarus in Poland and Lithuania. That's the direct consequence of the latest decree by the regime of Alexander Lukashenko. The decree bans the entry of any trucks and tractors registered in the EU, as well as other vehicles with Polish and Lithuanian license plates.
This is a major blow for Polish companies and local drivers who rely on trade through Belarus for their income.
The Belarusian regime introduced the ban as retaliation against Poland and Lithuania. The government in Vilnius closed its borders with Belarus at the end of October after several smuggling balloons flying into Lithuania forced the temporary closure of airports. Poland, on the other hand, decided to suspend its planned reopening of several border crossings with Belarus in solidarity with Lithuania.
Prime Minister Donald Tusk and Lithuanian Prime Minister Inga Ruginienė agreed that Poland will open its border crossings with Belarus around mid-November.
Belarus is an important trade hub for goods from China flowing into Europe, but this is mostly done through rail, which hasn't been suspended. The suspension of the truck transit coming from Europe through Belarus could affect other nations, though.
Usually, I would say that the Kazakhstan would be a main destination because there is a really big exchange of goods between Kazakhstan and Europe.
Trucks entering Belarus usually transport non-sanctioned goods like pharmaceuticals. They often make use of cheaper subcontractors in Belarus to take over the deliveries for the second part of the journey, lowering the overall costs of operations. This means the latest ban will have real consequences for Polish companies.
The ban means the margins or salaries of Polish operators, whose cargo previously reached its destinations through Belarus, will decrease.
The Belarusian ban is set to be in place until 2027. For TVP World, I'm Kazimierz Łysiak.
Despite the ongoing war in Ukraine and sanctions imposed on the Kremlin, some 79,000 Russians have crossed the Polish border this year alone. And now a new bus connection has been launched between Warsaw and the Russian exclave of Kaliningrad. Who can take this new route, and is it a security threat for Poland? Anastasia Janchenko reports.
This is the Belgrade border crossing, one of only two still open between Poland and Russia. Despite the ongoing Russian war in Ukraine and provocations towards Poland and Europe, traffic across this border remains active. From February 2022, by decision of the European Commission, passenger flights from Russia were suspended due to the sanctions. However, bus traffic has not been restricted. Currently, 8 bus routes link Poland to Russia. Since November, a new line connects Warsaw with Kaliningrad. From January to September this year, over 7,500 crossed the Polish-Russian border via the Belgrade and Rechodki checkpoints.
Permits for carrying out regular international passenger transport services outside the EU are issued on the basis of partnership to a domestic carrier and a foreign partner. As a result, on a given route, there are parallel permits issued to a Polish operator and to an operator from a third country outside the EU, to which the transport services are to be carried out.
Restrictions at the crossings with Russia were introduced in 2020 because of the COVID-19 pandemic. But in 2022, as a response to the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Poland shut 2 of 4 crossings for good. The movement of Russian citizens was further limited. So who can enter Poland?
Spouses and children of Polish citizens, as well as seafarers. Also included are scientists conducting various types of research or academic work in Poland, students, and individuals holding permanent or temporary residence in the country.
According to the latest data from January to the end of September 2025, nearly 80,000 Russian citizens crossed the border into Poland. For comparison, during the first year of the full-scale war, the number of such crossings was at 62,000, while last year 98,000 Russians entered the country.
At first, the regulation covered only a limited category of people. With each yearly update, the regulation expanded these categories, allowing more individuals to enter Poland. That's why the number of Russians entering the country has been gradually increasing.
On the border, we decided to ask Russians entering how severe the restrictions are.
I'm traveling from St. Petersburg to a town near Warsaw, where I'm taking care of relatives. They let me through quickly. The connection is convenient.
I'm from Moscow going to visit my grandchildren. I travel often, once every 3 months. I haven't had any issues crossing the border.
However, experts view the opening of the new bus connections as a potential threat to the country.
This might be also the persons who are to some extent related to Russia's intelligence or other special forces and organizations.
But Poland's border guards insist that the border is secure and that all crossings are monitored and well protected.
Border guard officers patrol this section of the border with Russia every day. This year, only 3 people crossed that border from Russia into Poland for the purpose of migration. After being detained by the Polish border guard, they were handed over to the Russian officials.
While Poland and other eastern flank countries restrict the movement of Russian citizens, Russians still travel freely to other European nations. France, Spain and Italy grant visas more liberally, while Hungary has relaxed its rules and is allowing Russian workers to enter without security screenings. Anastasia Yanchenko, TVP World.
As Europe ramps up defense spending in the face of a growing threat from Russia, German arms manufacturer Rheinmetall is opening new factories in Lithuania and Romania. Experts point to the fact that it's not only going to bolster industrial output, but more importantly, the strategic location of production sites could facilitate an increased Allied presence on NATO's eastern flank. Defense correspondent Zuzanna Jurek reports.
German defense giant Rheinmetall looks to expand to NATO's eastern flank countries. On Tuesday, ground was broken for a new artillery shell factory in Lithuania's northern city of Baisogola.
The new Lithuanian ammunition plant will be of strategic importance not only for Lithuania itself, but also for Europe and NATO. Its construction is a direct response of the turning point in history. We call it Zeitenwende.
This newest venture comes just a day after an announcement of plans to build a gunpowder factory in Romania, which the shell's producer said is poised to make the country an integral part of the European defense ecosystem. And Rheinmetall has gone on a substantial investment spree on NATO's eastern flank, from investment in Lithuania and Bulgaria to plans to manufacture 300,000 module propellant chargers through to Poland and Latvia, where Rheinmetall has signed memorandums of understanding for increasing cooperation with domestic manufacturers. This comes just as NATO and the EU are seeking to significantly expand the continent's defense industry output.
We can build on our experience in ramping up the production of shells. And we can learn from Ukraine's innovative industrial mobilization.
And as experts note, this is not just a question of meeting demand. It's meeting the most pressing needs identified by the European Union when it comes to the bloc's defense roadmap.
There's a bottleneck in European powder systems and propellant systems, so that's one of the things that they're going to be focusing on.
Additionally, as economists suggest, spending more on defense will allow Europe to free up more for further investments.
It's going to be doubling the GDP growth rate because of the additional expenditures that we're going to 5%. Of defense expenditures, so more than 5% of growth rate.
The stronger ties that follow joint military ventures are also a key factor in bolstering the military presence on NATO's eastern flank.
That also leads into deterrence, letting Russia know that we are ready, and we are getting ready, and we're doing it quickly, and we're doing it collectively.
For TVP World, Zuzanna Jurek.
It's the 75th anniversary of the European Convention on Human Rights. Despite Russia leaving the convention upon its full-scale invasion of Ukraine, the European Court of Human Rights still holds the Kremlin accountable for its wrongdoings before it left the convention. We will be discussing this with the Secretary General of the Council of Europe, Alain Berset. But before that, a report by Sonia Gatabiszczan.
November 4th marks 75 years since the signing of the European Convention on Human Rights, a treaty that made a set of fundamental rights binding. Today, it is interpreted by the European Court of Human Rights, and its effects are palpable.
The European Convention on Human Rights, for example, has abolished the death penalty. It's the region that has no death penalty thanks to the convention. In a post-World War II era, it was very essential to ensure freedom of speech and private life. This in totalitarian regimes and communist regimes were seen as unthinkable.
The treaty was established by the Council of Europe and is applicable to its 46 members. Although Russia has not been a Council of Europe member since 2022, the court continues to review applications against Moscow for actions until then.
The European Court of Human Rights has ruled in a number of important interstate conflicts in Europe, especially in relation to Russia's use of force against Georgia, Russia's use of force and aggression against Ukraine.
The court unanimously.
Just in October, the court ordered Russia to pay Georgia €253 million for violations after the 2008 conflict between the two countries, when Russia restricted crossings between Georgian-controlled territory and the Russian-backed breakaway regions. But already in 2022, Russia signaled it would no longer comply with the court's decisions, raising questions about their relevance.
If a person or a state is super powerful, do we say, oh, they're too powerful, we won't hold them to account, we'll let them get away with it, they can just carry on as normal? No, a court here solemnly adjudicated the evidence and reached a binding conclusion. I don't know if that conclusion will ever be delivered on in terms of compensation, but forevermore, Russia will be seen to have been judged and found wanting.
But it is not just Russia that questions the relevance of the convention. The UK's Conservatives leader announced they would have the UK leave the treaty should they win the next election, arguing the convention blocks migration reforms, prompting more questions whether the current legal order is up to date.
Well, the first thing I'd say to those who say this order is no longer relevant, tell me what the alternative is. Show me Plan B as the roadmap to honour human dignity. It doesn't exist.
Today we are launching the process to create a tribunal.
Among the Council of Europe's more recent initiatives is the push towards the establishment of the Special Tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. intended to hold Russia's senior leaders accountable for the invasion. For TVP World, I'm Sonia Gatabishchan.
To talk about human rights in Europe, we're joined by our very special guest, Alain Berset, Secretary General of the Council of Europe. Mr. Secretary General, it's the 75th anniversary of the European Convention on Human Rights, but is the convention still working in today's reality?
Very well, so even it's still working, and it's really important, this convention, 75 years. Just to recall, I mean, this court and with the convention is adjudicating on everyday basis as we speak now cases of violations of human rights, for example, in the context of the aggression of Russia on Ukraine. It's really important to have accountability, and it is only international court based on the convention addressing this. That's underlined the importance of the convention and the court 75 years after the foundation of this convention.
But shouldn't the document be changed to better suit Europe's needs of the moment?
It's clear that, the convention and the court have always to follow what's happening on the continent. And in the last 75 years, it has been possible to make a strong evolution, addressing the challenges that we are witnessing today. Just for an example, the right to privacy was not the real issue as the convention was written 75 years ago. And then it became an important issue, and then it was possible to address this. But we need to address in the Council of Europe with the Committee of Ministers all political issues. We need to address migration. We need to address, all the challenges that we are witnessing right now. It is important to do so, but then always to recall that it is important to have those institutions at the international level to make sure that the convergence that we need on the European continent to be as strong as possible will continue to happen.
You mentioned migration, something Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk was talking about not that long ago. Let me quote the Polish Prime Minister. When these conventions and treaties were written, no one foresaw the situation we now have on the eastern border. No one anticipated hundreds of thousands of people wanting to cross the Mediterranean Sea to reach Europe. So you understand the Polish government's stance on the matter?
I understand that we need to be able to address all political issues. And, as this discussion started on migration earlier this year, I was very clear on two elements. The first is it is a bad idea to put the court under pressure. We are advocating, we are working for independent judiciaries. It is not to undermine this in Europe and our continent. But at the same time, I was also very clear, we need to be able to address all political issues. That means migration in the context of the Council of Europe. And we are doing so. By the way, we are doing so. We will be able very soon to have very important meetings at the ministerial level. And I can just invite Poland also to participate at this level and to make the job with us. We need to define together on which continent we want to live.
Precisely. In today's Europe, you have those who try to act in accordance with the European Convention on Human Rights, and those who regularly abuse human rights, like Russia. Therefore, should one side of the conflict be limited by legal regulations which the other side does not respect?
I mean, it is probably what we can also be proud about, what we achieved on this continent in the 75 last years. The Council of Europe was not founded just to be a nice club with member states. The Council of Europe has been founded just after the World War II, after this suffering, destruction, violence, war. Just for what? It has been founded exactly to make sure as possible that this will never happen again. It is exactly the premise that our forefathers made, and it's exactly what we need to deliver now. I'm not naive that countries like Russia and others are not delivering on this. It is certainly not a reason to do the same. It is the opposite is true. It is a reason to continue to make sure that to underline that we want to live not in a world dominated by violence, war, destruction, and force. but we want to live in a world dominated by the rule of law, democracy, and peace and dialogue. That's exactly what it's at stake, and it's exactly what the Council of Europe is doing.
Mr. Secretary General, the Council of Europe is working on creating a special or on launching a special tribunal for the crime of aggression against Ukraine. When exactly will it be established?
We are ready. I had the privilege to sign with President Zelenskyy an agreement on this in Strasbourg at the headquarters of the Council of Europe last June for the establishment of this tribunal. Now we are preparing all the legal framework and all the elements, and we will be ready. We just need the support of as much as countries, member states, and non-member states as possible to make it happen. I mean, we need the countries, we need the support of the countries to make it real, and we are working on this. But, you know, it is only the third pillar of accountability for Ukraine in this situation. The first pillar, I come back to this, is the European Convention on Human Rights, addressing, as I mentioned before, on everyday basis, cases of violations of human rights in context of the war in Ukraine. The second pillar is the register of damage, and we need to develop now the claims commission. And the third pillar is a special tribunal. And we are working really hard on this, but it will be effective from the moment where we have a strong support, and we have the support and the members and states joining the effort.
How many, or should I rephrase the question, who is not willing to join the tribunal?
No, for the moment, we have very good signals. You know, we have this so-called core group working on this the last 2 years, more than 40 countries, all the G7 members, and a lot of European countries working on this, more than 40 countries. And they adopted an agreement, and they asked us then to make all the, I would say, technical work to make possible the establishment of the tribunal. And I think, I'm strongly convinced that those group of countries will remain strongly committed. But now we need just to have this support and also to have the ratification then. I mean, it is different legal situations in different countries, but I'm sure where there is a will, there is also a way to make it real.
Is Hungary and Slovakia in this group?
No, all countries are in this group. I mean, all countries are following the group. We have more than 40 countries, but now, you know, it's not possible for me to say who will effectively join. We are doing our best at the highest possible level to have as much as possible members, countries, member states, and non-member states joining to make the tribunal effective as soon as possible. We are ready, but we are not able to do this without the strong support of the countries, and that's why we are working in this direction.
Mr. Secretary General, once the tribunal starts working, will Russian war criminals, or Russian abusers of human rights, I should be more precise here, will they be tried in absentia?
It is exactly the discussion that we need now to do, also preparing the tribunal. I mean, you know, the results of the core group. It was clear that it was a need to make some compromises to have an effective support for this tribunal, and we are working exactly on this base. But the negotiations for the agreement, they are to come.
And lastly, don't you feel like there's a general problem with human rights in Europe? As Russia advances in Ukraine, more and more countries have a slightly different approach to human rights than they used to have only like a decade ago. Now, it was Latvia last week that decided to quit the Istanbul Convention.
There is an ongoing discussion, the political discussion in Latvia exactly on this, and we will see what will happen in the end. But you're right. We witnessed in the last 30, 40 years a strong movement of convergence, I would say, you know, for more democracy, rule of law, and human rights. And since 15 years, more or less, we are witnessing the opposite, divergent forces in action. And it's exactly the challenge that we have now. What can we do to make sure that working transparently together, we will be able to create more convergence again? Why? Because what is now at stake, a bit more than 80 years after the end of the Second World War, is exactly to make sure that will be we will be able to remain strongly committed together to have democracies, to have societies based on democracy, on the rule of law, and on a strong protection for the human rights. I mean, I have predecessors. I've been able to develop this exactly for the benefits of our populations, of our companies, because there is no investment of the long term without to have stability. And this stability has been really extremely important for the continent. But now it's exactly what is at stake. We must be good. We must be able to do this together in the new world that means also adapting to the new conditions that we are witnessing right now.
Alain Berset, Secretary General of the Council of Europe, was our guest tonight. Thank you so much.
I thank you.
And thank you for watching and stay with us for more news and interviews here on TVP World.